Hello, we are live with Louise from Australia. She's on the other side of the world.
Hi, everyone.
I found Louise one day when we were doing another live. I think it was with Lyndon from Murder at Bedtime at Lyndon. And I
It was
remember it
indeed.
come through. Yeah. And I don't know what brought it up, but you had mentioned something that always
We're
fascinated me.
talking about Nicole Kessinger,
Oh
Chris Watts'
gosh, that's
girlfriend.
right. Oh my God, that's right. Of all people, Nicole Kessinger. And we brought up like legalized prostitution, and Louise said that she had run a brothel. And I just happened to catch it in the comments. And I was like, oh my God, stop the presses. I am fascinated by this. So what ever got you into that to legal, like what got you into, you ran it, or you ran the brothel?
Yeah, well, I mean, most people would call it like a madam. I think that's a generalized term, but we just call them receptionists. So there'll be like a head receptionist and then a regular one, um, like an office kind of thing. But my like schooling was in like hotel management originally. So I was
Wow.
working in a 5-star hotel in Melbourne, and I'd done reservations and all kinds of things, and I was like a reservation manager. And then I got sick, and not going into that, but doctors couldn't figure out for a while what was wrong with me. I was missing a lot of work days. And, you got bills, you got your mortgage to pay, things like that. And I was thinking, I can't keep up with this. I need a job that's flexible. It's not 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then I started thinking, well, I have a couple of clients who would stay at the hotel, and they owned parlours. And they'd always been saying to me, come on down, come and have a look around, you know, see if you like it. I think you'd be really good fit. And I was always like, I don't know. I'm not that kind of person. I was sort of raised a Catholic schoolgirl. If somebody showed me what marijuana was, I wouldn't even be able to like tell them like whether that was oregano or not. But
Right. Oh my
I started
God.
thinking about it, and I went down there, and yeah, I tried it out for a few shifts, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't
That's
what I expected at all, at all.
what
I
was
thought there'd be all these terrifying, scary girls and rampant drug use and bikies everywhere, but although there was all those things, it wasn't. They were they were very nice people, very nice, and always very considerate. I mean, there were occasional problems, and I have to admit, my first night was probably the worst out of the whole time I ever worked there. But other than that, it was quite pleasant.
and what happened? What was the problem with the first time? What was the issue that happened? That was
All right. Well, I had a few days training with one of the other ladies who worked there, and she'd been there forever. I think, she was like the mum kind of thing of all the girls. And then she finally said, you're good to, do a shift on your own. And it was a nice, quiet, I think, Sunday night shift. And so I went in, and it was all going well, and I had all the rooms rolling across properly, and, the bookings were just going smooth. And then all of a sudden, a client came running down the stairs, and a wild look in his eyes, and he says, oh my God, there's something wrong with her. And then he just bolted out the doors. And I'm thinking, wrong with her? What? So I told one of the girls, said, hold the fort. I ran up there, and this girl's having a seizure, like on the floor in the room that he just bolted out of. And I was like,
oh my
holy moly,
God.
what's going on? And so I like put her on her side, the recovery position kind of thing. And she started to come around. But when she came around, all the rooms, they're covered in mirrors around. And she stood up, she looked at herself, and then she started punching the mirror like she was frightened of what was going on. And I was like, oh crap. And she was right, it was the first room right near the top of the stairs. And when she started wandering out, I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to fall down the stairs. I'm trying to hold on to her, and she's like wildly just storming in that direction. And she had no idea what was going
Oh
on. Turns
my
out it was an
God.
alcohol withdrawal seizure where she tried to
Wow,
stop
okay.
drinking, but
I
she
was
shouldn't
gonna
have done that
say,
apparently.
yeah, yeah. Was it possibly a, because that happens. I mean, I was thinking of drugs withdrawal, but same thing. That's very scary. I cannot imagine.
Oh,
So
it was
was she
wild.
fine after? Was she fine afterward? Was she like what did
And
she come
she
through?
was actually. She was so embarrassed. And then she came in and, you know, me and the other lady who trained me talked to her and gave her some like pamphlets. And she ended up actually going to a rehab. So it worked out well for her. We were like, if you want to do that, come back. And I think that's what people forget about it. You think it's a bad thing, and there's always the unintended consequences of legalizing something. I understand that. But I think in a way, it's something that's good for these women. They're going to do it anyway, but this way they've got
Exactly.
help, and it's very structured. Um, what people don't realize is these girls, they have to get tested all the time. Like if they don't have a certificate from certain places to say they haven't got any diseases or anything like that, they can't work. So it makes them more careful about their health. They can't have like certain crimes, attached to them. You know, theft
Oh,
and things like
okay.
that. They'll get banned from all the parlors. They can't use drugs at work. I mean, it's not like we drug test them. You can't because they do use outside of work, and they probably do at work as well. But as long as it's not in your face and they don't bring it on the property, it
Right.
keeps them more sort of going in the right direction. And a lot of
Yeah.
them will only do it for like a year or so, and then they'll move on and go back to school or do something else. It's not
Yeah,
sometimes it's often a stopgap for someone in a desperate situation.
yeah, I remember years ago I worked in a strip club and it was the same thing. There was drugs there, but the girls that did it like really kept it, to themselves and they just did it to get that's what they did to get through the night. But it wasn't like wildly explosive like you see you or would think. It was hidden. Like they didn't drug test and you knew the girls that did them, but it wasn't out in the open. And I guess the managers there figured if it was going to be done, they're going to do it anyway. So it was just like you said, it was very much hidden. That's interesting.
Well,
See
if
here.
you drug tested them, you'd have no staff because
Oh,
they do it.
exactly.
But it makes them show some control because they know
Yeah.
if they come in off their head, you're going to say, "Nah, sweetheart, come
Yeah.
back tomorrow." You're not working like in that state. It's embarrassing for us and you as well. So thanks, but no
Right.
thanks. See you later.
And like, did you ever have to do that? Did somebody ever come in that was completely like too messed up to work?
Oh yeah,
It did
a lot
happen.
of the time, but
Oh,
they
really? Yeah.
knew it too. They usually wouldn't argue. They just go up the next day and apologize, and you'd be like, okay, well, you got a few warnings, but yeah, not waiting in line to greet clients and just nodding off. That's just
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, because also, what would happen if I let you go upstairs and you can't push the emergency alarm if you're unconscious. So it's your health as well as our business as well.
Right. Right. That makes sense. And also, I always said that, like, here it is completely, well, in Nevada, it's legal, but in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, where I live, it's completely illegal. But it's a shame because the girls, like you said, they're not tested. They're not, it's so unsafe. They have to either deal with some sort of guy who's being nasty to them anyway, or being on the streets by themselves, and it's just you see them in the more it's just very unsafe. They get beat up a lot. There's so much that can happen. That's why, and a lot of them are so drug addicted. Oh my gosh, it's like you were there. If they came into your establishment, there's some sort of consistency and a person that says no, you can't work like that. Where here it's a shame how you see some of the women walking down the street. I mean, like you said, nodding out, just strung out and beat up, dirty. It's a shame. Oh, here's Murder at Bedtime at Linden. Hello, Linden. Good morning, Linden. I'm sorry.
Hello.
This is
I just
Louise. We're
subscribed to your
talking.
channel, Lyndon.
Oh, she subscribed to your channel, Linden. Thank you for coming in, Linden. It took well, our power went out. Somebody hit a pole right down the street. I was freaking out. So Louise was just telling us about how like it's really is nice to the control that they have for the women because it's legal, it's safe. She was, she was telling a few stories about how the one woman went into a seizure, and then I was just going to ask her, when they come, like what kind of, okay, so you were the madam, so say I wanted a job. So would I come in? What would I do? How would you determine that I was good enough to work for you?
Well, it was usually left up to whichever member of reception was on that day. I usually had a sort of rule of thumb. Sometimes you get a lot of young girls who thought it was just a glamorous thing, and you could tell this is not the place for them. They didn't need it, but they just thought, it's an extension of their Instagram or their Facebook or something like that. So I'd usually get one of the roughest girls that we had there to show them around and sort of scare them a bit. And mostly those girls would never come back. But you could tell the ones who they're usually strippers or they've worked at another place you know, and oftentimes mostly they would come in just by being friends. They work with another girl at another parlor because girls are sort of like subcontractors to each parlor. They don't necessarily just work only for you. And so they'll
Right.
call up beforehand and be like, do you have any spaces on shift? Because if it's a quiet shift, you won't have a lot of girls because otherwise they won't make money. And it's not fair for them. And, they don't make any if they've sat there for 8 hours and didn't even get a booking or something like that. So you sort of limit it. And the girls that worked and didn't nod off and weren't coming in on drugs, you'd put them like at the top of your list. And then if it was a
Okay.
Saturday night and you needed a lot of girls, then they'd finish their shifts at like the strip clubs in the city and they'd ring up and go, have you got any places left? And he'd be like, have you worked here before? What's your name? Look through the list. Oh, yeah, she's got like a good rating. Come on in. No problem. We can
Wow.
we can sort you.
That is very much like this
So yeah, but they
stripping.
work at all of them.
Yeah, that is so much like stripping because that's legal here, but that's how it was. Like you would call up, you would say, like there was a circuit, and this was just a strip club again, and you would say like, "What's for tonight?" The girls that work, the girls that work the best, and the ones that, like you said, were not nodding out, were good solid workers, they would get the top choice. Like they would be there every Friday and Saturday night. And it sounds so similar, but I know it's different. Um, is there anything? I mean, what was your sort of client that would come like when you think of a client, you think of these dirty old men, but I don't think it's like that. I think it's actually probably men whose maybe wives are too old. What sort of client would you get? Oh, Claire, how you doing, Claire? Nice to see
Hi,
you.
Claire.
What was the
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of clients, really. I would say usually in the morning, you would get a lot of truck drivers who've just come into the city. They're parked
Wow,
up, the businesses aren't open. So early in the morning, the interstate truck drivers will come in and sure, they might seem like dirty blokes. They're kind of popular with the ladies because they were old fashioned. They'd be like, yes,
they knew
ma'am,
how to
no,
treat
ma'am,
them.
and
Yeah.
they looked rough, but very, very, very polite. Then they would tip, they'd remember, and they wouldn't necessarily always pick the prettiest girls or the youngest ones either. They had their favourites. They liked usually just like anyone they could have a laugh with. So sometimes they would pick just something you wouldn't think, like an odd choice. Like we had some older women, like up to their 50s and things, and they would be booked flat out in the morning just because these guys just loved having a laugh. And you could just hear like the giggles from upstairs. And half the time the lady said, they barely did anything. They just sat there and talked stories and laughed and had a massage and yeah. So those
That
would be
is
like your early
wild.
morning customers.
I never thought about. Oh,
Yeah,
Claire says hello. I never thought about. That's interesting. The truck drivers that were, I mean, for them it would be like a relaxing stop. You know, like you said, they would pick the ones with humor and somebody they could relax with. That's really cool. That's interesting. You
that's
know,
it. And rather than doing it at the truck stop, they'd come in and have a little bit of fun, and then they'd have their shower, there, and then they'd head off to work all clean and shiny, and a little bit of
uh,
kick in their step for the day, I suppose.
so was that what it's like? Was it like a hotel? Like in each room, it was set up with like
Yeah,
a
they're
shower.
all suites. The way it works is the gentleman would come in and there was like little cubicles. There's like five of them with like a curtain that would go across. As they go in, I'd seat them in there, and then I'd sort of go the microphone, "Hey ladies, get your butts out of here. We've got a customer." And they go in one by one and have like a couple of minutes chat with them, and then the girls would go back, and then they'd come to the desk and say which one they wanted, and so I'd,
That
I'd
is
book, and I'd say
wild.
wait 2 seconds, and then on the intercom I'd call which girl. She'd grab a set of 3 towels and
Yes.
a sheet,
I'm
and then
sorry,
they
I'm
get a little
still.
baggie with all the different size condoms, like from small to mega, and
Oh
a couple of
wow,
little packets
that's
of
I
lube,
never thought of that. So you had
and then
condoms
off they
before.
go.
That is
Oh, they
amazing. So
have
you,
to. Then it's
but
not allowed to do it without. And if the
wow,
customer demands it, the girl still gets paid. The customer does not get refunded. He can leave if he doesn't want to. That's
but they
tough luck for
have
him.
to. It's like a necessity. You
Hmm.
have to wear a condom. That's
Well, I mean,
fantastic.
you can't force it, but the girls will do it because they know they're getting tested, every three
Yes.
months. And if they come back with a test for anything, they can't work anywhere because you can't get that certificate. So
Oh,
they'll, even if they might want to, or it might be in their head to do it for extra money, it's not worth it. That's why it's set up.
yeah. That is really interesting. I never thought about
And
that.
then
See,
they'll
that's
take
a great thing. Yeah, it's a great thing
they'll take
because
the
you. Oh no, go ahead. I mean, it
oh,
was
sorry,
just
no, I cut you off. I was
no. I was
talking
just
too much as
thinking
usual.
no. I know because of the delay. It's just a great thing that they have that because not only is it testing for like the heavy hitters, but it's testing for everything, right? I mean, it's testing to make like probably herpes and everything else. Is that you know, and then if they come up
Yeah, it's
positive for even that, then they stop working? Or what about herpes? I mean, that's an odd question, but what happens if they come up positive
no, they
herpes?
they can't work if they can't work.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So even if they had
It's
it
actually
before,
interesting.
like if they had herpes before, like because that's such a chronic thing that's
Well,
able to
they wouldn't be able to get a
a certificate.
like a yeah. But
Okay.
I haven't come across that. It hasn't been something that's ever turned up. I mean, the girls are very careful because they want to work there because they know it's
Right.
safe. They know they're going to make money, and they know
Absolutely.
that yeah, you don't want to be on the streets because that's when you start getting picked
Yeah.
up by the police because there's no
That's
excuse, for it then.
so what
And not a lot of them start quite young.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, is there anything like any stories that you're thinking of that are like that have stuck in your head about it? I mean, you think of it as this like glamorous almost movie, and I'm sure it's not like that. Was it just like
Well,
it
no,
becomes
actually,
normal?
the one thing I was probably the most surprised about was in Australia there is like a welfare, but if you're disabled, say you've got like cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or something like that, the government actually pays like a certain amount so they can go visit a parlour once a month. So we would get a lot of, especially during the daytime, like the home carers would bring in people who had disabilities or, that sort of thing. And the one thing I was surprised about was the girls would fight over them. They would absolutely fight over them because they're the easiest, nicest customers. And they were just so grateful, for the attention. And they loved coming and we loved having them. And yeah, their carers would have a good chat and, give them a coffee, put them in a little massage chair in, the main lounge while they waited. And yeah, I was actually surprised. I thought it was really, really sweet, you know. And
That's
and if ever any
amazing.
one of the girls mistreated them, they'd be like, "Don't you dare!" I remember one one guy. We used
That's
to call him what was it? What did he call himself again? A super soldier or something? I can't remember. But he used to come in and he'd walk past to go get like to the shops every day. He lived round about there, and he'd come in and he'd be like, "Ladies, is anyone bothering you?" And he'd be like,
oh,
"Oh, check my muscles out." And then everyone would run out and be like, "He's here. Oh, your muscles are huge." And he'd be like, "Is anyone bothering you?" I'm like, "No, but we'll let you know if they are." It was so cute and just that was so sweet.
that
Yeah, I mean,
is
you
so
wouldn't think
cool.
you'd think they were just like mean, but they were. Everyone was like it was like a I don't know, I guess a whole bunch of girls living in an apartment, like it was quiet and no one was there. And there was all these, TV screens around the room and like a song came on, everyone would start like doing a dance out the front and just acting like a bunch of idiots. And when the guys were there, the girls are just in pajamas and slippers and slopping around. And it was so funny. Everyone would see on the cameras, "Oh, clients coming in." And they bolt back out. All of a sudden, they're hair's nice, lingerie. You're like, "Wow, you whipped it together pretty quick." Used to make me laugh.
That is so cool. Oh my God. It's like something you wouldn't even think about. That is so cool. Yeah, somebody said mad respect for disability sex work. Absolutely. That's something I never would have thought of. That's really nice. It seems like you would get almost very close to your workers and your clients,
We
and
do.
you know
I always felt like they were my like little sisters kind of thing half the time.
that's
I feel
really
like,
cool.
because they do things like they'd come in and go, I don't know how to fill this form in. They'd be applying for something or they didn't know, and because a lot of them didn't finish school, and they'd be like, "Oh, can you help me out, Louise?" And I'm like, "Sure," and I'd explain how they had to do it and what pieces of paper they need to attach and things like that. So it, I guess it's probably like an ego thing for me, but I always like go home and be like, "Oh, such a good person,"
Yeah, I did
but
a good
help
job.
them and.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I'm trying to think. There's so many questions like that I had, and of course, nothing's in front of me. It's let's see. Because I know here everybody always wanted to legalize. It's always been talked about because I think it's a necessity. It's always been done. It's always going to be done, and it is so much safer when it's like you're talking about, and it's fun, like you said, the girls kind of take care of each other, and of course you as the madam take care of your workers. Is Was there any time that you felt like a dangerous did anything besides the girl, like was there any time a guy walked in and you were like not so sure about him, like, oh my God, is he going to be okay, or he looked maybe, you know, uh, swarthy, or was there ever a time you were scared of somebody coming in?
Oh,
And
absolutely. The one
and
thing I
Lyndon
didn't like was
and Lyndon had a question. Is it the same principle as Amsterdam, where the city authorities run the buildings and give out the licenses?
it is actually Linden. There's only a certain number of licenses. It's kind of like taxis and things like that. In other places, it's quite hard to get one. Most places can only have 6 rooms. There's limited numbers, and there's a whole set of conditions attached. Like it can't be in a residential area, which is good because you don't want strange cars coming and going in like your neighbourhood. So most of them are in industrial areas. Sort of where factories and shops like that are and things like that. So unlike Amsterdam, it's not in downtown areas in Australia. It'll be out the back, out of the way places usually. But
Right.
yeah, no, it's all very, very highly, highly restricted what you can and can't do. And for instance, like for my job, I had to have a criminal background check. I had to have like a credit check to make sure I wasn't in debt, so I couldn't be compromised or bought, to do
Really?
dodgy things. Yeah, it
Oh,
was huge.
wow.
I had all kind of interviews I had to attend just to get a license to
That
basically just book
is.
the rooms for them. So
Oh, wow. Oh, so you had to get a credit check just to become the madam. You
yeah,
mean
and the license cost it's probably more now, but when I started, it was like 420 a year. But I was
okay.
fortunate that where I worked, they paid for it for me. But I mean, that's not cheap. pretty
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
expensive just for a job.
Wow, that is something. And now I was thinking because you were just about to answer what was somebody who came in because you were just about to answer it that you were a bit nervous about somebody who came in and looked like maybe you
Oh
were like,
yeah,
oh
I
my
was
god.
gonna say, rarely did we have many problems. Because it's interesting. Like, it's not like bikies or what do you call them, bikers. They're
Yeah, the bikey.
like
Yeah.
run the parlors, and but they all sort of have different parlors that they'll go to, so they don't run into each other. So I know
Okay.
ours with the rebels would be there often. So usually had one or two of them in the building, but there wasn't actual security at all. The security was me, so I had to like look who was coming in, open the gates so they could come to the car park, and then there was like sort of like a double airlock sort of door coming in. So if
Okay.
too many came in at once, so it was like a big bunch or they looked drunk or something, I'd be like on the intercom and I'd say, okay, guys, split up, two of you come in, and then I'll call the next two, just so they couldn't come in a large sort of parade and cause trouble.
Right.
But there were occasions that I got nervous. Now I had a huge counter in front of me, and behind me was like a locked, like sort of a safe room kind of thing. So I could go in there and shut the door and be perfectly fine. You couldn't get in there, but I couldn't do anything about the girls if something went wrong. But
Wow.
yeah, a few times stuff would kick off, but fortunately, I always had a few big Maori girls. They're like the indigenous New Zealanders. And I don't know if you've ever run into any one of those, but even most men will not pick a fight with them. Like
Right,
a lot of them
right.
specialise in what's called squashing, which I'd never heard of before I worked there. But a lot of men like to be like wrestled and sat on, apparently, until they can't breathe. And this is the thing. But yeah, so
Wow.
usually one of them would come barreling out, or often the clients who are waiting, because they'll usually have a few regulars, and then they would jump in and be like, "Leave the ladies alone." So, yeah, but it
That
did
is
bother me that there was no actual specific security, but usually everyone sort of chipped in together as all together security.
that is amazing. So they would kind of step in and be that. Wow, yeah, because I imagine like bikers to me would be the most apt to. Although I know a lot of bikers and they're nice, but there's some that just want to start, and they would probably be the most apt to start trouble out of nothing, out of something
No,
stupid.
no, no. And all of them, the bikers would be the least likely to, because if they did,
Really?
and you mentioned it to the higher ups in the club, they would be told that they were to come in again, kind of thing, because they don't
Okay.
want the police around somewhere where they're hanging out, because they
Ah,
might want to come in, book a room, or deal to the girls, which you don't see. They just interview them and leave, interview them in the room. You
right,
can't put
right.
cameras in there so they can deal to the girls. And if police are hanging around the establishment, that's no good for them. So they'll be the least likely and the most to cause trouble and the most likely to stop it,
Wow.
because
That
they don't
is
want any attention.
interesting. Okay, I never would have thought of that. Wow, that's really so there was never like any
You
time
know,
that
the things I learned. I went from a naive little lamb into a hardened, cynical
Into a worldly
person.
woman. That's it. Like, you really probably learned. I mean, was this how long ago? I mean, was this were how yeah, like, were you young? How did you get into it? I knew you said that
I
you
wasn't.
were out of work.
I wasn't young. I was in my early 30s, but I
Okay.
was not. It wasn't like I had much of. Like, I'd always worked lots of
Yeah.
jobs, but they're always like, nice hotel admin, or or I was at school. And I have to admit, I was never a big party person, so this was an eye opener, but in a good way, because I was always thought of these people as scary and frightening. And then I realized that they're probably more honest than all of the rest of us pretending that we're all so perfect. Because
You're
they've,
right, because
they've
they're
got
stripped down.
nothing to cover up. They're already at the bottom. And to most of them, they'll have nothing, but they'll give you the shirt off their back. And you think, wow, I'm such a jerk by comparison. I really am. I learned
Yeah,
some lessons from
no.
them, probably more than the other way around.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, like you said about they would give the shirt off their back. I remember there was a prostitute that I met. She had been going to a drug rehab, and I remember I said something offhanded to her like "good luck," but she was on the streets, and she just started crying, and I thought, what did I say? And she said nobody had ever said anything to her like that, which really broke my heart, meaning that she had been on the streets for so long with nobody helping her. She had always been by herself. So that kind of thing, that's why I think even more legalization is needed, because then they do have somebody looking after them, and it would be safe. It's always going to be. I know so many, there's a certain neighborhood that it's just always going on. And I don't understand why they don't legalize. It never made sense to me. It just makes more sense to me to legalize it. It always has. And I think that's, noble. That I never realized in Australia until you said that it was legal. And what made you move away from it or stop doing it? Did you just get another job or stop working, or, when did you
No,
stop?
it was actually just this whole COVID nonsense. They shut everything down. I mean, they're open again now, but
Oh,
I'm sort of in a pretty good position now. I don't feel like going back to work at the moment. I've got
I
a
don't
few other
blame
things on my plate that I'm doing.
you.
And also,
Okay.
it's kind of a young person's game, working all those nights and things like that. So yeah, I've kind of got a few other things I'm working on right now. But
Yes.
it's not that
I
I
know what
wouldn't,
you
and I have
mean.
nothing bad to say about it. I would recommend it for anyone. But you are
Yeah.
really a glorified laundress. You do a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
folding towels, laundry, folding sheets, herding
Oh,
people in
wow.
one
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah. The day-to-day
Um,
operations. You're right. When I think
yeah,
of it still to this
there's
day, I think of this, it's just like you said, you forget about the day-to-day thing. It's amazing. You think of this Pretty Woman like movie that it's probably not. That is amazing.
no, definitely not.
Oh, I think, Claire, so how does sex, I mean, so now that COVID is it with COVID going
Yeah,
on?
they're open. They're open again now because our government's such a bunch of hypocrites that I can't go to church, but the parlours are all open. But I guess
Oh.
the church doesn't make them any money, so COVID flies over the top of parlours because they can tax it quite hugely.
Of
That would
course,
be my thoughts on the matter.
the
I don't.
taxes
It's
always
this
come
magical
in.
disease.
Wow,
It only bothers certain spaces.
that is amazing. It's absolutely, oh my gosh. God, I just want to make sure there's nothing I mean, what was the
Oh, I was
most
just
like,
going to say in reply to Lyndon's comment before about squashing, if he
oh,
thinks
yeah, yeah.
that's funny, I
That
was
is
saying I've seen
hilarious.
a
I know.
whole lot of things.
Let's go back
Like
to the squashing.
I never. I never even knew about things like scat fetishes before. And believe me, you don't want to accidentally open a door and run in on that because you can't find enough eye bleach to sort that out. And then the other thing at the end of the night, I used to sometimes give one of the girls like an extra 50. I think who didn't make enough money tonight? And I'd be like, one of you, please do the bins because there's a certain bin where they have to put all the tied up condoms in. And if you've ever smelt like shut a big garbage bag of that and you
Oh
take it
my
out to the
God.
dumpster,
I
it's
cannot
not worth
even.
it. It's really not worth it. You don't want to have to do that. As I said, there is no glamour in that. Not at all.
See, that's the little things you never think about. I would never. Oh my God, that must be.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, because also the doors don't have. If you haven't logged a certain room into the computer sometimes, and you, oh, I'll just go up and check, and you knock, but they might hear you because they'll have the radio up or something, and then you open it. Sometimes it's like, and then also there's the other thing you have to do as a manager, which you might not know about, that the girls when they take the men up to the rooms, that first of all they have to check them, so they got to pull back their foreskin, look under their bits and pieces, and just check that they don't have
Wow.
any visible sores or weeping or anything like that. And sometimes the guys will argue and they'll be like, no, 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 that's just heat rash from sitting, you know. And then the girl will get on the phone in the room and they'll be like, need a second opinion. And your job, because you get this training and you have to go through this manual with all these pictures in it, is that I'm
Oh
supposed to
my.
know. And
That
it's the worst. You go
is.
up and look this brilliantly bright light and you're like, hey man, I'm not like a doctor or anything, but how about you just come back another time because
That
we don't
is.
know and it's for everyone's safety. Oh, it was the worst, the worst.
That
And
is.
then they would have a shower.
That I. Oh my gosh, I would never even think. Wow, yeah, because guys are probably just be like, "I'm okay, I'm okay." Lyndon has. Would you say a
That's
lot
right.
of men who went to where you work were mostly shy and not scary, or is there a lot of
Yes,
scary guys?
mostly shy, very nice guys. Often it was just lonely guys, guys who were really busy. Or then we had also a lot of elderly men too who, like, many of them are like, my wife's sick, I don't want to bother her, she's got cancer or, she's got diabetes and she's not into it, but I don't want her to get upset. And yeah, it was
Right.
kind of, I don't sound weird, but also sweet in a way. Like,
Oh, I
and they were
know.
ashamed,
That's the ones I
but
always
you
felt
feel
most bad for. Like because there was one guy I'm
the
thinking
only
of.
bad clients were like Saturday night, like the
Yeah.
party kids on Friday and Saturday night. I didn't like them, but the rest were pretty good.
What was that? What was the Pouty Kids on the Friday? What was that? The Friday and Saturday night
Well,
thing?
like, the young kids, they get together in a group and get their friends and be like, ha, ha,
Oh,
ha, let's go there. And they'd
it,
often be, just, that bluster in front of their mates,
yeah,
trying
like
to,
more of a
like,
joke
have a
than
laugh and bother the girls. Well,
yeah.
exactly. And so, I usually sort that out by picking the one who looked the most easy to intimidate. And I'd be like, buddy, come over here. Like, look, your friends, you're all getting kicked out unless you keep an eye on them because I know that they're acting like idiots. So,
Right.
I'm holding you to account. And they just go, and they'd all, like, you go back in, polite, 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 polite. But yeah, we had big events like like the Grand Prix or like the tennis and that on, you'd get a lot of tourists, and also those nights not the best to work because they're in a foreign city. They don't have to behave, They're ready to just do whatever they
Oh,
want whenever they
yeah.
want. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to mess
I
with
try and
Madame
schedule my
Louise.
holidays around then.
Right, I get it, and that's, and then this bleeds into what's the weirdest customer you've ever had? Claire wanted to know.
Well, it's probably
Whether
this. I would assume he was a South Sudanese gentleman because they're the only people on earth who are like all 7 foot and taller. I don't know if you've ever met one. They're skinny as anything and they're super, super tall. And he came in and barely spoke a word of English. So I assume he just freshly landed. So wearing a suit, so seemed polite enough. So I put him in the room, and then I called the girls, and I went back to explain to him that the girls are going to come in one by one and have a talk to him. And he stuck his hand out. I thought he was going to shake my hand. He just grabbed hold of my crotch, like
Oh my god!
I was like, yeah, I think he can go now. And he didn't say a word. He just stood up and wandered off. And I'm like, well, that was different. not the usual.
Crazy. Oh my god! That is unbelievable.
Not what I was expecting.
Yeah, right. That was a shock. Oh my god! Now that's interesting. So that's I never thought about that. Like a bunch of guys coming in, like almost wanting to try to impress each other, and it's like that's not what we're here for. Like, just it is a business. You're right, and I can imagine people just get, especially younger guys. I can picture like now, like the truck drivers coming in. Maybe did they have like their favorites? Was there? I mean, would some come for?
Yeah. Often they'd book ahead, so they'd make sure that they got them. So they would call up, and then they would book for that time, or even book a certain girl and a specific room. Some of them, like if they had certain fetishes, like being peed on, they'd call in advance because they'd want the girl to drink a lot so that she could pee a lot on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then there was like, most girls wouldn't do it, but the ones that would poop on them, they'd also book them in advance because the girl would have to make sure she obviously was able to and available. And most, like I said, most of them wouldn't do it. Even for me, like having to ask a girl to do that was,
right, a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
That Lyndon says, I never knew it entailed that much. I'd be double bagging my bin bags. Lyndon, that was probably the most shocking out of everything was the bin bags. I never even thought of that. I cannot. That job is something I don't think I ever thought of. That is wild, but very fascinating. Let's see what else. There's, again, I always compare it to stripping because it seems so similar. You would always get your set customers, your set girls. There was drama here and there, but it wasn't much. Like you said, we always had problems with bikers though, but that was on a whole different. It was just because I don't know, drunk and just carrying on. I'm just trying to think if I got everything. And so you genuinely liked it there. Would you ever go back? I mean, would you, what?
I mean, I would if they're in an absolute pinch and they needed me. I'd go back for sure. I did enjoy it. That's for sure. I mean, there were some odd moments. Like I remember one time I had to go pick up the supplies from. It's like sort of a sex supermarket, one of those big places, and I had to get like boxes and boxes of lube and condoms, and the girls would put in orders because we got like a discount with them because we ordered so much. They'd put in like orders for certain sex toys and things like that they needed. And I had my car, literally boot, all the back seat, front seat, just loaded up with like sex toys, lube, condoms, like in a little package. And then the policeman pulled me over. I was like, how am I going to explain
God,
this?
you're kidding.
And I guess I was like looking a bit nervous because he goes, you seem a bit nervous. Is there something I should be worried about? And then he looks across and there's this box of just dildos, sticking out of my front seat. And I'm like, no, nothing at all. I mean, obviously he didn't do anything. But the look on his face, I was nearly died. I'm like, well, I've got to this one up for interesting things that have happened this week. He probably was like, I've got to get away from this lunatic.
I was just going to say, it's probably like, go motor on, lady.
Move along, woman. You're frightening everybody.
That is great. Oh my God. So did you have anyone, like, when you walked in, who was it, just you and then the girls? Was there anybody helping you? I mean, what was the staff like? How was the setup? When you walked in, you would walk in, you said it's like a small hotel. And then so if I was just a customer and I came in and I did not know any girls, what would happen? How would I come in? Like, and I'd say hello, and then what would go on from there? I mean, how would you know that, like you said, you had to make sure they were safe too. So how did that work? Like if a guy came in that you
Oh,
didn't know, like, how do
there
you
was
know
there was an
that?
alarm under the counter that would call the police and alert all the rooms. So because the girls would be these like back rooms and they all sort of hang out, and there's a big kitchen and bathrooms and lounge rooms. It was sort of like a house at the bottom. So the girls would be
Oh,
everywhere, and every every room would have like a big monitor with all the screens. So the girls would watch them too, because for for them not only to see that a client was coming in, but they could see, especially there's one that focused on the face when they came in. So if they knew someone in real life and they didn't want them to know that they did it for a living, they'd be able to tell. So they'd always be watching the monitors, so that they,
okay.
like if their brother or their dad came in, they didn't accidentally go and intro someone they
Oh,
knew, because that would be awful. So they keep
yes.
an eye on that. So if something went wrong, they'd be watching. There was intercoms throughout.
Okay.
There was emergency buttons in all the rooms. And as soon as one pushed, it'd go off, and it sort of showed up in each room where it was. And everyone would just run at that room like 100 miles an hour. Everyone's, grabbing whatever they can, and the doors don't lock. So it's not like the client can lock themselves in there or anything like that.
Right.
Um,
Wow,
which
that's
has, this
interesting.
has its drawbacks, but it's probably, better and safer. It's just an unwritten rule, unless they push the emergency, don't open the door. But
That is
yeah,
really
and
that is
there was like
that's an
three
amazing
shifts
setup.
mainly, and the
Yeah.
girls would just work each shift. It was day, afternoon, and night, and yeah,
Okay.
you call up and go, which shift can I be on? And there was a certain amount of girls allowed to be on each one, sort of first in, best dressed. But if there was someone who was, a better girl, like who was more loyal, who'd been there for longer, she would get priority over someone that hadn't really put in the time and the effort. That's generally
Okay.
how
Oh,
you arrange it.
okay. That's interesting. And how many girls will work for you at one time? How many girls are or in a given night? What was the
Well, I mean, on like a Friday, Saturday night, it could be up to 30, 35 girls on.
Wow.
But during
Oh,
like a
wow.
day shift, you might only have 5 to 10. So it would depend.
Yeah, and I think, Linda, I missed the first few minutes. How did you hear about the job interview? I mean, you can go over that if you want. How did you first get the job of being the madam,
I
Lyndon?
I
I
was
think we could go over that.
in a quick summary. I worked in hotels, and one of the clients owned parlors, and he offered me a job. I went and checked it out. So I thought,
That is
oh, I'll see,
amazing.
have a look, and
Give
then
it a
decided,
whirl.
this is interesting.
But it
That's it.
sounded like it was a good experience for you. Like, it sounded like it worked out. I mean, it seems like you have a good takeaway from it. Like, nothing really terrible happened, right? There wasn't anything that happened that was horrible outside the seizure one.
No.
Yeah, that sounds really
Oh, I
cool.
mean, there was a few of them. I remember one young girl, which is, like I said, the reason why I didn't like the young girls working so much, but the really young ones, I'd try and, scare them away from it if I could.
Yeah.
Um, she came in, she was really young, 18, 19, but her personality was young, and she went to go take her booking, her first one, and she put the guy up in the shower after doing the and then she came down and proceeded to have this panic attack. And all the girls were running around like idiots, like with their heads chopped off while she was,
Oh,
and I remember this guy, going, stop it. And it really made me angry because I told her this wasn't for her, and she kept doing it, so I
yeah.
just slapped. And she stopped it straight away, and it was like, you slapped her. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I did. I said, look, she's fine now. Yeah, she didn't come back, but she started breathing again just fine. Like, calm down.
Just
Well,
relax.
it's the advantage. I've got 5 sisters, so I guess
You got
hanging
used
around that
to
many
it.
girls was a bit natural.
That is
That's
so
right. If you had to fight 4 girls for a bathroom on a school morning, yeah, pretty much
you
the
get
same
used to
thing.
it. That's it. Oh my gosh, yeah. The panic attacks and everything. And again, when they came to you, they would come in and say like and you probably did, like you said, it was probably like almost a network at one point where the girls would be known if they were good, bad, who to take, who not to take. Um
Yeah,
I mean,
you could tell the ones who've done it before. They'd
right.
be just straight up like, "Hey, you got any spots?" I'm like, "Here, here, here. I strip here, blah blah blah." And you'd be like, "Okay, look, come in on Thursday. I've got an opening. Well, see how you go. See what the customers say." And they'll be like, "Okay, cool." But the ones who come in all, I'm kind of wondering if I can, and then you'd be like, "Oh, no." But yeah, I'll be polite and go, sure. So
This
you've
is
not done this before, and I'd yell out, find the roughest girl who was there, and I'd be like, give them the tour, and
yeah.
then I'd get the girl to take them up and frighten them a bit as they showed them around. And here's where the alarm button is. You use this one when the guy starts getting rough with you. Usually their car would take off out of the car park so fast, dust flying.
Yeah. And Linda wants to know if you're ever going to write a book because, man, there would be some good ones.
I don't know. I don't know. It probably would be banned on Amazon when you can't write that. Too many people be triggered or whatever it is these people get these days. All getting upset about everything,
Oh,
which
I know.
makes me
It's a
laugh so much. I remember the first time I had this lovely girl from Mauritius who came to work, and she had long, braids and the French accent. One of the very few black girls we had because they weren't particularly asked for very much, but she was so funny. And my nickname for her was Black Magic. And
That
some of
was
the
her name?
young clients
Black
would come
Magic?
in. No, that
Was
was
that
my
it?
nickname for her.
Oh, I love
Because
that. That is so cool.
we had this young hippie girl come in, and she was like, "You can't call her that." And I'm like, "Oh, watch me then." And the girl herself thought it was hilarious. I was like, "Oh, you can't." Well,
I think
yeah.
that's a
Well,
cool
this is
name.
this is Australia. I said if I didn't insult you, I hated you. Like if I give you an horrible nickname, that's when we know we're real friends.
Yeah, right.
We
Oh,
all
no,
call each other here.
oh, that's interesting too. The racial mix. I mean, what was the? I guess well, like that's it. Like what it was. I guess not a lot of black girls. It was mostly white, Asian. What was the breakdown of the like
Yeah, the
ethnicity
Thai
wise?
girls were very popular. We'd
Oh,
have
okay.
quite a few of those. Um,
Like
and it's
exotic.
interesting because they would all hang out. They'd all hang out in one room. There are a lot of guys like that. They act all meek and nice when they're with the guys. So, oh my god, those girls,
Oh, together
they're like
they're quite
money
different.
extracting robots. I used to call them. But they can cook, that's for sure. I used to love when those girls were on shift. They'd go into the kitchen and just whip up all this amazing food and just bring out bowls for everyone. So I was like, yes, we've got a
Really?
Thai girl on.
Oh,
We're gonna eat good today. um,
oh, that
yeah,
sounds
Thai.
delicious.
A lot of us, a lot of Aussies or like European white girls. But yeah, the boss didn't like too many of the dark ones, and it wouldn't be good for them either if we had too many blacks on because if they weren't asked for, then they wouldn't make money. And I always felt really bad if the girl didn't make money on my shift. I'd try and make sure
Yeah,
everyone got at least a booking. It's
right.
just horrible watching them sit there for 8 hours, intro, and then just not get a booking. So,
Right.
I know
Oh,
you probably shouldn't
yeah.
do this, but when I'd go in and ask the customer which one they wanted and they weren't sure, sometimes I'd try and push them towards whichever girl hadn't really made any money. I'd be like, look, when I saw you, I thought the girl for you would be this one because, she's very popular and it's unusual she's available right now. And, just try and rev up
To
and
pump her
make
up.
sure everyone made a
Yeah.
bit of money. Yeah.
Wow. That is
And then when they had the
amazing.
confidence, they probably do better next time.
Right. Wow, I never even thought about the huh, that's interesting. I never even thought it. I guess people have their own tastes and, whatnot. That's really because here it's like, I don't know, in Philadelphia, it's like the exact opposite. Like in the strip clubs, especially the ones in the one neighborhood, it was like the black girls were the most desired. So, I guess it depends on the location as well. That's interesting. Um, so
Yeah, well,
what
that's it.
yeah, that's interesting to think about. I never even would. So what are you
But also
near?
with the
Like,
clients as well, the girls would have their own preferences too. So like they were
oh
always allowed to
yeah,
say no. So
right.
the client, if they went in and had an interview with one and they didn't like him, they'd come back past the desk on the way back and they'd be like, not that
Oh,
one.
they
And so
could
if they
pass
asked,
them
like
on.
the client asked for them, I'd be like, oh no, you just missed out. She just got booked. How about another one?
Oh
Because sometimes they'd
wow,
be like, ooh, I don't like him.
that is
So that was another thing that was good
interesting.
for them.
Yeah, for whatever reason, would it be? I mean, I don't know if you would know this, but why would they say no? Is it the look, or they just got a bad vibe from them, or
Usually it was just a bad vibe or
yeah,
like oftentimes it would mostly be sometimes that they smelled too. Like some girls are very
yeah,
particular and
that wouldn't be.
there were some fragrant
That
clients
doesn't
and
sound fun.
I can often remember wandering around with the Glen 20 afterwards. Everywhere they'd gone,
Oh,
like
I
a
can't even
smell trail.
imagine. Oh my gosh. The smells that must go on in that. I can't imagine. So, is it
You
like
don't
in
want to
the
know.
country? Is it like the city? Is it the country? I'm trying to get a feel. Where is it?
Oh,
Where
well,
do the
where I am
people go?
is the city.
Oh, it is in the
Not
city.
not like the
Okay.
city, not like the city center, but like just like outside
Like
of it.
right
That
near
one's
it.
very central, so everything's about 10 minutes drive from the main center. So
Okay.
yeah, it's outside of the CBD.
Oh wow, okay. So I guess yeah, that is so amazing to me still. And they're running now, even though it's COVID, but as we said, it's probably taxes. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, do you keep in touch with any of the girls, or is it just more so business like, you know? Like
Oh
the
no, a couple of them I do. A couple of
oh,
them I
that's
do,
cool. That's
definitely.
cool. Oh, that's
You
nice.
can't help but spend that amount of time with people without becoming friends with them.
Yeah, right. It's like work. You spend so much time. Exact. That's yeah. That's and it is. It's like a job, but it sounds. And you're right. You get this glamorous image of it that's probably so different. Like I always think of a movie,
So,
just all these fabulous things happening, and that's probably. And then you're with the bin bags, and
but
that's the reality of it.
yeah,
That is.
or
Oh,
just
that's
doing load after load of laundry. It's like,
oh, that's
yeah, this is the
right.
life I wanted to live.
That oh gosh, Louise, we're coming up at the end. I am ecstatic that you were able to do this for me, especially after the power outage. Is there anything else you want to tell people about what it was like to be a madam in a brothel?
I can't think of anything. If anyone has
Yeah, yeah.
any questions, though, go
Yeah.
nuts.
Does anybody have any questions anymore? I don't know. I think Linda, if there's a couple people out there, um, Linda's usually always my go-to question. Claire, anyone, any more questions? I see. It seems so similar to when I worked in a strip club, and it's even though it's different, of course, because we're only stripping there, and I was not. I was the bartender. I was not like in charge of the girls or anything, but I just noticed so many things. Like you said, the strippers that came in, you knew the ones that were good, you knew the ones that were bad, you knew the ones that did drugs. You got familiar. There was like a circuit, and it just became, gosh, it was so you just really got to get close to the girls, and it was a shame because some of them really had bad drug problems. And there wasn't as much, like, it seems like even though it was a brothel, it had much more control. Like, you had much more not like rules to follow, where in stripping it was just, I don't know, it was where I worked, it was not good. It was kind of a shame. Like, a lot of girls were just addicted to drugs and stuff. I mean, it ran, but it was a lot different. It didn't seem as nice as your brothel. I mean, the way you paint the picture, it sounds like it was a pretty cool place to work. I really appreciate you coming on here. And that's it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome.
At least I got to explain.
You're absolutely delightful. I mean, I love your accent too. It is awesome. I always wanted to go to Australia.
Super bogan. Well, probably not at the moment. It's a bit of a mess right now. Police just locking everyone up everywhere from breathing oxygen. I don't know if you've seen anything on the news. They've gone a little bit crazy.
I know. I can't believe it. What is going on right now? I mean, just as a side note, is anything clearing up, or is it? I don't know.
Not where I am at the moment. It's still pretty bad. I think our premier he got drunk on power and went like full Bill de Blasio, like, except worse. He's like, leave your house, I'm going to have 27 cops punch you into the ground. Yay, this is great. And this happens so quickly, so I'm not hoping it'll turn around. Yeah, I have hope.
That is amazing. God, I would love to go down there once. I've never been to Australia. My mom was there once. She said it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, what city are you closest to? What's the like?
Oh,
Sydney?
I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, Melbourne. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, that sounds so pretty. Oh, one day. Louise, I'm going to cut us off.
You have to stop by and visit. Oh, okay, no worries.
I would love it. I'm going to cut off the live, but I'll talk to you. Good night, everyone. This was Louise. Thank you so much. I'll cut off the live.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Oh, Louise. Thank you.